Okay, so imagine a guy who hangs out with kings, tells everyone he has the secret to eternal life, and then, after he officially dies, he just doesn't stay dead. Look, this isn't some movie plot. This is the real story of one of history's biggest puzzles, the Count of Saint Germain. And that really is the question, isn't it? It's been stumping historians and fascinating mystics for, what, almost 300 years now? Was he an unbelievably brilliant con man? A high-level spy with the perfect cover story? Or was he something else? To even get a handle on it, we have to see what the people who actually met him saw. And what they saw was basically a ghost in the high society machine of the 18th century. Here was a man with no history anyone could check, no family, and a bottomless pit of money that nobody could trace. He could slip into any European language like he was born speaking it. But the really unnerving thing? For decades, the man just stayed in his mid-40s. So let's start right where his legend begins, with him just appearing, poof, right in the middle of Europe's most powerful circles. You have to remember what the 1700s were like. Your family name, your bloodline, that was everything. It was your ticket to the big leagues. And then this guy shows up. He's incredibly cultured, incredibly refined, and he doesn't just get an invitation to the party. He becomes the life of it. In a world where your ancestry was your currency, he was a king with no kingdom, and everyone just went with it. And what's so wild is how consistent all the stories are, whether you're hearing them from Paris, London, or St. Petersburg. Two things always came up. The guy could speak any language flawlessly, and his face never changed. The most famous story is from an old countess who swore she'd met him in Venice when she was a young girl. When she bumps into him again at the French court decades later, he hadn't aged a day, not one.
But here's the thing, his whole mystique wasn't just about looking young. He actively encouraged the idea that he was an immortal, a master of secrets that time itself had just forgotten.
And this is where the legend just catches fire. He was a close buddy of King Louis XV, and he would hold entire rooms spellbound with his stories. He wouldn't just tell you about history, he'd describe what the room smelled like at a famous council, or the exact sound of a king's voice, like he was just pulling up an old memory. And then he dropped the bomb. He would casually bring up conversations he'd had with Plato, or mention that he knew Jesus and the apostles personally. I mean, that's the moment he completely crossed the line, right? He went from being this fascinating, super knowledgeable guy to something else, something maybe not quite human. So you see the divide he created. It was massive. For the skeptics, he was the ultimate storyteller, a history buff with a serious flair for the dramatic. But for the believers, his stories weren't just stories. They were memories, and they were proof that this man held the actual secret to living forever. And, he had the skills to make you believe it. He was a master alchemist. He was famous for taking flawed diamonds and somehow making them perfect. He'd do these chemical experiments that blew away the sharpest minds of his time. On top of all that, nobody ever saw him eat in public. Ever. So naturally, the rumors about a life-sustaining elixir just took off. But his influence went way beyond just cool alchemy tricks and fancy parties. The Count was tangled up with the most secretive, most powerful movements of the Enlightenment. See, the Enlightenment was an age of these radical new ideas, and a lot of them were cooked up in secret societies. Well, the Count's name is all over the most powerful ones, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, even the infamous Illuminati. This wasn't just some guy who knew important people. This was a guy working inside the hidden power structures that were literally shaping the future of Europe. So all this deep involvement kind of leads to two big theories about what he was really up to. Was he just an incredibly good spy, using this mysterious personality as the perfect cover to move between nations? Or was he what the mystics believed he was, an ascended master, a higher being sent to guide humanity's development from behind the scenes? And just when you think this story cannot get any weirder, it does. Because the most unbelievable part of Saint Germain's life, well, it started after he was supposed to be dead. So the official records say he died in 1784. End of story. But for a guy like Saint Germain, death was apparently just a suggestion. Just 5 years later, multiple credible people swore they saw him in Paris, warning everyone about the French Revolution. Then he keeps popping up all through the 1800s. And the sightings just keep going, right into the 20th century. And that's really how the transformation happened. These sightings after his death took him from being a mysterious historical figure and turned him into something much, much bigger. A timeless legend who, for all intents and purposes, had literally beaten death. Which, of course, brings us to today. Because in a way, the Count of Saint Germain is more alive now than he's ever been. His story has become a cornerstone of New Age beliefs. He's a character that shows up again and again in books and pop culture. He's become this symbol for the ultimate unknown, the keeper of ancient secrets, the dream that we can somehow overcome our own limits. So in the end, we're left with these two completely opposite ideas. Was he the greatest con man who ever lived, a brilliant performer who played the entire European nobility for fools? Or was he a real guardian of forgotten wisdom, a symbol of what humanity could become? Ultimately, the Count of Saint Germain is like a mirror. He reflects our own deep-down desire to believe that there's something more out there, something beyond the everyday. The fact that there's no hard evidence is exactly what keeps his legend alive. So, was he just a fascinating historical puzzle waiting to be solved? Or was he truly something else? A man who somehow stepped outside of time itself? The answer, just like the Count, seems to be forever just out of our reach.